This is the video, this is the story you've all been waiting to hear. Today, I have a member of the whale community here to discuss with all of us and shed some light on the whale side of the story from all of the topics regarding account sharing, account buying, and all of those topics that really seem to upset a lot of people in today's video. Not only are we getting one whale's perspective, but the perspective of his entire group and his entire community. About a week ago, he and I started talking. I thought that his perspective was important to listen to, so I invited him onto the channel, which he thought was a good idea so that we could all finally hear from this group of people that have yet to be heard. So, as I said, we're calling him Mr. W. I appreciate you coming to the channel. I know you're kind of going out on a limb here today, talking amongst everyone here on the channel regarding and for the whale community. But we know why you're here. We know that everyone, you want everyone to hear your perspective. So what's your motive for this? Why do you want to come to this channel, and why do you care what everyone thinks of the whale community, and why do you care that your side of things is heard?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your channel. I very much look forward to this conversation. Yeah, I'm here because I think it goes without saying that, as you briefly mentioned, there's been a lot of controversy and heated discussion around some of these recent topics involving not just individual whales, but like communities and clans and servers and whatnot. Um, for the most part, I think our community kind of lets just goes, and we're all fans of the YouTube community, and we watch the videos. Believe it or not, we actually comment, subscribe, we do all those different things. But with the recent rash of videos, unfortunately, it was just kind of sitting unwell with me because I heard a lot of things reported that were kind of reported as, and I'm using air quotes here, the unequivocal truth, but it was really misinformed and contained a lot of inaccurate details and false narratives. So, as you mentioned, there's always two sides to a story. I wanted to shed light from a whale community perspective. Now, I don't represent all whales, but I did, reach out to a few, and I think it was very supportive of this, just basically speaking out and representing that it's not all doom and gloom. There is a whole culture and community out there of people who spend on the game. So instead of some of these other, videos where you're getting secondhand or third hand or information through informants and rumorville, I wanted to bring it to you straight from the horse's mouth, like as someone who lives and breathes in that community, who understands the culture behind it. I wanted to do it on this channel because you've always been pretty level headed. I like your content. You're always intellectually neutral and allow people to draw their own conclusions, which is my goal as well. So instead of tackling like specific people or names, I want to look at it more like as a larger issue, right? What's the larger issue at hand? How can maybe Blizzard address this stuff? And I feel like it's a much more productive path forward than having an angry mob sort of cancel culture mentality, which we're kind of seeing displayed in certain pockets. So I hope that we can have a productive conversation.
Well, first, I have a few things to say about that. First of all, I appreciate you coming to my channel. I purposefully try and take a neutral stance in my videos because I know I have watchers, viewers, and honestly, friends on both sides of this story.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's my neutral position is intentional. And I actually get quite a bit of hate sometimes for being in that neutral position, but I think that it's the best spot for me personally, to take. And I appreciate you coming to the channel to talk about all of this here. I also
for
appreciate
sure.
that you took the time not only to come up with your own thoughts, but to converse with everyone from your community, or at least a large number of people. By the way, the community was all supportive of this interview happening, so I think that that's also a really great thing. So why don't we dive into one of the first topics, and this is probably what people want to know about the most: the account buying and selling. Is it real, and what are your thoughts about it? I mean, I know that this doesn't just happen in Diablo Immortal, but let's focus it in on Diablo Immortal right now. So what are your thoughts on account buying and selling?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating topic. I'm glad we're able to cover it. The short and simple answer is yes, it absolutely exists, right? So before, people are like shocked and appalled and they start clutching their pearls, I just want to frame it just as you just said, right? Let's just take a step back and examine the reality here of the situation. Like, as much as people hate to admit it, all the stuff that we just talked about, what you just listed, sharing, trading, selling, buying, it has literally been part of like every online Blizzard game for what the past decade.
Yeah.
It's pretty ubiquitous for basically all online games in general. This is nothing new, right? So, and people out there, your listeners, your watchers, your subs, anyone who's a legit gamer, understands this. It's kind of like this sort of part and parcel of the gaming environment, right? And I would say anyone who acts like they're holier than thou and pretends otherwise, I think they're just kidding themselves, right? So you have to understand that this happens not only at a high res level, it even happens at a low res level. Like this is not even exclusive to a whale activity. If you remember Diablo 2, it's like what one of the most beloved and heralded Diablo games in the franchise history, right?
True.
And yet it was fraught with this. Like how quickly people forget, right? People used to grind up level 99 characters and sell them. People used to hire people to grind for them when they're on vacation, right? People would even sell names like $20, $30. You want my name? I'll sell the rights to you, and I'll change my name, and you can have like it was running rampant, right? So now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here endorsing like, okay, let's violate TOS or let's if it's right or wrong or this is what we should do. What I'm trying to say is that this has sort of been a fabric of Blizzard games for a long time. So, if we really want to address this, like purely address this, then what we have to do is we can't take this very siloed and narrow point of view of just saying, okay, well, let's just simply ban anything and everything that moves, right? We have to come up with a more practical, real world solution for this. Otherwise, you'd be only combating the symptoms. You're not addressing a flawed system, right? So you ban one account, but like, how is that preventing other TOS violations to occur, right? So let's take a step back here, and I want to frame this carefully. I want to give people the context because some of your listeners may not be aware of this. There may be Diablo Immortal might be their first Diablo game or their first Blizzard game. So let's kind of set up the real world premise here, right? So at the end of the day, Blizzard, this online video game platform, it's all a business, right? And in a business, money talks, whether you like it or not. That's the bottom line. It doesn't take a free to play or a whale to understand this concept. So let's take a look at Diablo Immortal. Right, you got heavy spenders, and they're basically the main lifeblood of the game's revenue. So it's their revenue stream, to be honest, that really keeps the game afloat. Now, obviously, other stuff factor in, right? But the heavy spenders is the lifeblood of the game. So the reason why Blizzard can continue to pay developers to design and create new content, the reason why they can continue to do game balancing or bug fixes or patch updates and whatever, like all this stuff is funded by these heavy spenders. That's sort of their mainstream. And I can tell you, like, full transparency, I don't personally work for Blizzard, but I have friends and I know developers who do, who are working there right now, who have worked there in the past. They even play like this game, not for this game in particular, but I know that play for other games. And I can assure you, I've had conversations with them. They know exactly what is going on with each account. They know exactly what you're playing, when you're playing, how you're playing it, and the time and money you've spent on that account. Furthermore, they have AI and data science that projects how much you will spend in the life cycle of you owning this account, right? So it's like don't let their poor customer support fool you. They're not as dumb as you think they are.
Yeah.
When it comes to their bread and butter, they know what they're doing, right? So some whales, they know. Some whales will spend upwards of $100 to $200,000 building their character. Like this is not news. This is not new. Again, not my position to judge. It's like, hey, you do with your money how you want to spend it. If you got it, you spend it. I'm not hating on you, right? But the fact of the matter is, the game wouldn't exist in the first place if you don't have these spenders. So, if you think about it, right? Truly think about it. If someone pays the equivalent of a car or a house on an account, they are not just going to throw it away when they're done. It's like Echo. If tomorrow you bought a Lambo for 100K and you drove it around for 2 years and you want to move on to a new car, what would you do with it? Like you wouldn't take it to the junkyard and just scrap it. That's preposterous, right? That's unheard of, right? So you obviously would try to sell it, or I don't know, like do something with it, sell it most likely, so that you can recuperate some of that money. Even if it's pennies on the dollar,
Of course.
something's better than nothing,
Of
right?
course. Yep.
So these accounts, depending on the residence, depending on the secondaries, depending on the pets, there's a lot of different factors, right? Even down to as minute details as are your gems PvP geared or not, right? Are they PvE gems? Are they PvP gems? Everything comes into scrutiny. These accounts can go anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000, right? And so, suffice to say, yeah, it's not 100 grand, but $30,000 is a huge chunk of change to the average person, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's reasonable to conclude that these whales are selling to other whales. These are not maybe the blue whales, but they're what we call the dolphins, right? So they'll still pay for these accounts, and they're still going to spend on this account. Like the revenue stream doesn't stop, and Blizzard knows that, right? So because anybody who's going to spend that much on an account, they're going to want to keep playing. They're going to want to keep improving. They're going to want to keep enjoying the game, and you keep enjoying by you keep spending. So rest assured, right? Blizzard knows exactly which accounts are heavy spenders, which accounts are the $5 monthly passes. Like it's very clear for them. So let me paint this picture, right? So hypothetically, let's just say I'm throwing a number out there, totally just hypothetically, if a quarter of the DI population that are remaining are whales, and those whale accounts bring in, I would say, 80-90% of the game's revenue. What do you think will happen if you just ban all these whale accounts? Right? I mean, first of all, it's going to be really difficult to determine legitimately, is this a purchased account? Has it traded hands? Is the original owner still playing it? There are certain ways to do that. I won't dive into that. I'm sure they could, but it's pretty
Yeah.
risky. There's risk and exposure if you ban someone who legitimately spent 200K. It's lawsuits pending, right? So first of all, it's not easy. Second of all, even if you do succeed and you cripple the game's revenue stream, like what do you think is going to happen to all the future content, right? So it's a complex problem. It's not just a black and white thing that you can just take a blowtorch to, right? So I would caution people, put your pitchforks down for a second and let's think rationally about how to solve this problem. Okay, so you might be thinking right now, all right, well, you made some good points. Like, this is all fascinating information, but then how do we actually address it? You can't just outright ban everything. What should you do? Well, for me, I actually think the video you made, what was it, a few days ago or last week, about the marketplace is actually quite brilliant. This has actually been talked about in the community as well. Like, we've talked about this because it actually makes a lot of sense, right? Think of the situation in California, right, where they were spending so much money and resources trying to police marijuana, and they realized, you know what, this is a never-ending, impossible battle to win, and they just embraced it. And what did they do? They ended up legalizing it, regulating
Taxing
it,
it.
operating it, monitoring it, and taxing it, right? And I think, I mean, and this is not a novel concept. It's like medicinal marijuana has been used by Big Pharma for decades now. This is not a new concept. And I think in the absence of a marketplace in Blizzard, because this is like happening across all of their games for the past decade, of course, without the marketplace, people is going to use back alley channels. They're going to use backroom Discord conversations. They're going to use these sort of like, I don't want to say shady backrooms, but just it's all off the grid. It's like a quote unquote black market, right? Because there's no other substitute for that, and people are not just going to throw away an $150,000 account. That's just stupid. So if I were Blizzard, like again, instead of just hunting down individuals or clans or whoever, because I can tell you this is everywhere. Anybody you've ever met, there's a chance that they have a shared account, right? So it's not just an isolated problem. If Blizzard makes a community marketplace that is commonplace for everyone, so that it reduces the risk of scams and other shady transactions. If they actually legalize it and they regulate it, and then they even take a commission off of it, just like they take a commission off their platinum, I think it actually reduces the risk, and it just provides a safe space where this stuff, because it's gonna happen whether you like it or not. And we know that Blizzard, I don't know if they're gonna enforce TOS all the way, But if you're not going to do that and there's a gray area, then instead of hiding from it or stepping away from it, let's address it. Let's put a spotlight on it and let's make it into an actual feature for the game. That's sort of where I am with this whole topic.
No, I mean you made so many great points, and I had thoughts come in my mind and leave. At the end of the day, you're right, and this is something I've said for a long time regarding how whales support this game. From the first month that the game launched, I was always a huge advocate for Diablo Immortal and the update schedule. Every month, we have a pretty decent update. Most months there's something
Mm-hmm.
pretty good, and some months it's like, okay, it could have been better. But the update schedule inside of this game and the new features that we get on a regular basis is pretty great compared to other mobile games. And that's because of the
Absolutely.
amount of money that they're getting from it. I mean, pay to win games are going to make a lot of money, and then they're able to add that to support the development team to make new content
Yes.
on a regular basis. So I
Correct.
very much know that my $15 a month on average that I spend is not supporting this type of development. And I've been very vocal about that. I know this. And I think everyone knows that if they're free to play, they're not supporting the game financially. If they're buying the battle pass, they're minimal support, which is fine.
Right.
And that's honestly, I actually think a quarter of the
It's
people
fine.
playing the game still, I think that would be a huge number if they were all whales. I don't even think that it's that big of a number that 25% of players are playing are whales. Maybe there's stats out there that I don't know, which could very well
Yeah.
be. But that would actually, in my opinion, be a large number. But yes,
Yeah.
the issue that you rose up, the people out there with the pitchforks that want to ban all the whales for buying and selling accounts, that point of then what happens to the game because it's no longer going to be making the money from the players that are really spending. Is the game going to die? Can they pay for development? Will updates stop? Now, not saying, and again, you know that I play the middle of the field, not saying that
Hmm.
that breaking terms of service should just be an okay thing. When you look at it as like a
Right.
law or a rule in life,
Hmm.
if you break a rule, there should be a consequence. So I definitely see,
Absolutely.
I see how people that are against this, why they're against it. I understand that. But I also see the consequences that would come if Blizzard did put their foot down and start doing this, which, let's be honest here, it may be a massive reason as to why they haven't been doing that. And you talked about a few friends that you have that work at Blizzard or wherever they may work. I also very much agree that they know who's doing what inside of the game. They have the tech to
Yeah.
be able to know who's on an original main account. I spent a lot of time working with Supercell in years past, and it was
Hmm.
very easy for them to tell if something was
Hmm.
an account starting with one person and moving to another or not, just based off of IPs, locations, and things like that. So
Yeah.
let's move on to the next topic, though. And by the way,
Yeah.
I love the amount of detail that you're giving here. This is definitely going to be a longer video, but I think that you're really going to represent your the whales side of everything in a pretty clear fashion. All right, so
Yeah.
we kind of talked about account buying and selling. I started a lot of this out, and I'll be very honest here. When I started some of these videos, they started about 2 months ago. I was very much, compared to how educated I am on everything now, I was very much uneducated on all of this stuff. And I was hearing things, it was a lot of that, hearing things from people and saying, and deciding to share that with the community and whatnot. One of those videos was actually a more recent one, and that brings up my next question. Is the $20,000 cost for a blessed rain actually true? Um, and I made that video because I heard a lot of hearsay. Believe me, I get screenshots like crazy from whales, from free to play, from everyone. And I never share that stuff in the videos. And I've always said that that's not something I'm going to do. I want all people in the community to feel comfortable sharing stuff with me for my knowledge and not for me to go blow up other people, because that's not something I want to do.
Yeah.
But so I want to talk about that 20,000 blessed rain. Are there clans who are actually guaranteeing blessed rains as a paid service?
No, this is one of the most comical rumors I've actually heard. I personally have never heard of this. Not, I mean, I can't tell you what I don't know. Maybe it happened somewhere, but as far as I know, this is completely untrue. This is
Okay.
absolutely 100% patently false. Now, here's why. Okay, just and I think you mentioned this in one of your videos, right? There are, assuming, I don't know how many servers are left, but on every server, there's basically 6 clans that can rotate Blessed Reigns, right? And we can talk more about this whole like Blessed Reign rotation, all that stuff later as well. But that's 600 people, right? Both sides per cluster multiplied by every cluster in the East and West Coast. It's a lot of people. Never mind the ones who don't even care about being immortal, who are just like, I just want to stay shadow. I don't really care about the cosmetic. But like, think about your most recent Blessed Reign. I'm in leadership for clans, so I see this happen every single day. You barely ever get 300 people active for the entire reign. It is virtually
Yeah.
impossible. It's like herding a bunch of cats. You're dragging people past the finish line. And at in the old days, the reason why the 300 active people was important is because in order for the immortal to get the 20% badge, which is coveted in the whale community, because if you have a 20% and a 12% and a 20% badge, even just one 20% badge, that makes all the difference in the world in these crazy whale super lobbies and battlegrounds. So the 20% was coveted, and the only way you can get the 20% is if you continuously beat the previous reign's domination score or dominant score. So you need, it's not just whale power, you need worker bees and you need people who are going to be doing their dailies and grinding every single week. So as many people as you can, but it never happens. There's always people who are dropping off. And so you're trying to grab whoever you can, right? It is extremely easy for anyone, even if you're a low residence, to just join a clan, piggyback for free Blessed Reigns. Anyone can do it. Think about how many reigns go up every single week. The idea that someone or some clan is going around and personally going from individual to collect $666 using Venmo or PayPal is just utterly ridiculous. It's like completely laughable. We can barely limp across the line with 300 members. Why would everybody pay for it, right? Not to mention the fact that it is almost logistically impossible to maintain this. What if someone leaves? What if they don't pay? What are you going to do? Like, you're not going to hunt them down, right? So I feel like was one of those really contrived things, but I know why. I'm going to tell you why. Because this 20,000 number jumped out at me. I think what's happening is that there are two stories that are being conflated here. Now, whoever fed this information to the content creators who've been covering it, I don't know whether they got their facts completely wrong or they're just trolling them. I don't really know. But the $20,000 mark, that number is significant. It's true. It's true about a whole different story. And I think two things are being kind of like confused here, right? So let me shed some light on what actually happened. So it's safe to say that from a whale perspective, there's really nothing worth competing for, because if you think about it, aside from battlegrounds, which is like where you can go and kind of flex your ability to compete and win at a high level, the only other thing that you can really kind of compete with, using air quotes, compete, is this 7 week Blessed Reign. It's like, well, who can get the cosmetic faster? But to be very honest with you, whales don't care about the cosmetic, right? If they want a cosmetic, they'll just pay for the phantom market. Like this whole thing is not about the cape. It's about prestige. It's about elitism, right? It's about being able to flex. And so Blizzard put that carrot in the game, but as a whale with a 100K account, well, what they do is, oftentimes beef occurs between two whales or multiple whales, right? Beef occurs between two factions. There's a whole whale community that talks among themselves in a Discord. And so what this was is, to be pretty blunt, it ended up being like this one gigantic de-measuring contest between two whale factions, right? They were
Yeah.
two alpha whales basically flexing on each other. They were talking crazy, and they were just the only way that they could truly prove who's better is two things. Either I'm going to do a Blessed Reign and there's nothing you can do to stop me, no matter how hard you try, fully unscripted. Give me your best shot, and I'm going to roll over you. And keep in mind, this was back when you had to win 8-2 on the final week, and also winning the immortal statue phase to clinch a blessed reign. When it comes to fully unscripted PvP, that is extremely difficult. You need to have a lot of soldiers on your shoulder. The other way is I'm going to stop you from getting your blessed reign. I don't care how many whales you have. I'm going to hit you harder. I'm going to prove that I can block you from your blessed reign. That's really literally how these people are beefing, right? And it was entertainment. It was popcorn theater for us. Most of us were just watching and enjoying the show until one of the whales decided, you know what? Like, I have so much disposable income, I guess, because keep in mind, right? These people who are rich, they live in a different world than we live in, right? They'll go to a restaurant and drop 5K on a bottle of champagne. Like 20K is not that much money for them, for some of these people, right? So the light bulb goes off in one of the whales. And he says, look, I know I'm at a disadvantage because the other guy has more people than me. I'm going to go hire mercenaries. I'm going to go scour the servers and pull the best PvP killers that I can find for my cause. And what's in it for them? Don't worry. I'm going to make your time worth it. I'm going to pay you. And this has not been fully. I'll be fully transparent. It's not been fully proved, but the rumor has it is that the highest amount that he paid for an elite PvP killer was $20,000. So if you think about this, right, I can see where this was misconstrued. All of a sudden, these crazy killer whales descend on your server. All hell breaks loose. There's probably a bunch of trash talking and turmoil, and it's a full blown war, right? And afterwards, after the death and destruction and all this stuff happens, they go back to their servers. From a person who's playing casually, what does that look like? It looks like somebody came, destroyed everything, and left. Was it collusion? Was it all bought and paid for? I can see how that's being misconstrued, but I honestly think that two stories are being conflated here, and whales have whale battles, whales have whale wars, they have whale beef, and a lot of times it's not as deep and tinfoil hat or conspiracy theorized as people think.
Okay, so potentially something happened with $20,000, but I think what you cleared up here was the point that this is a service. This is a paid service that if you want to be part of a blessed reign, you could pay this and you could be thrown into it and you can get that cape, you can get those stats, and you could have that clout. So that's been debunked, but potentially somewhere mercenaries were hired essentially. We could call them like pro players were hired to help out with a war somewhere. Is that clear? Did I
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
absolutely. I
okay?
mean, people will pay for anything, right? People
Yeah.
will pay just to wait in line on Black Friday if you don't have to, spend 3 hours in line. And so that was just one of those things. So yeah, paid for the Blessed Rain service is completely something wild. I've never heard that before, ever.
Okay. So something that a lot of players, specifically like myself, my clan, we're a very casual
Yeah.
clan. We don't compete to
Yep.
be. I mean, we compete for the Shadow Wars and all that, but we don't ever we don't push to be immortals because we're more casual players. That's just how we are, and we're comfortable with that. It's like how we like to play the game. But there's a lot of players that say because of this, because of you know these mercenaries being hired or just these whales taking over, it's not giving the opportunity for the more casual clans to become immortal.
Yeah.
Now, I'm kind of on the fence
Right.
about this, right? Like, so one is
Hmm.
if I wanted to be an immortal, I probably shouldn't be a part of a casual clan. And the second
Yep.
part is it actually closing off the opportunity for other players? Like, are there players that are just all free to play and they really want to be competitive and they push to be competitive, but they just can't do it because of things that the whales are doing to the game?
Well, I mean, this whole like arranged blessed reigns or
Mm-hmm.
what people call win trading, is
Yeah.
it good? Is it bad? I mean, first and foremost, I'll be honest with you, right? Arranged blessed reigns absolutely do exist. They're happening almost on every single server. I can tell you right now that we know who the whale clans are. We know who the whale actors are, the participants are. there's very, very few servers that are actually competitively competing for a blessed reign. That's just the God's honest truth, right?
Hmm.
But I think everyone's so misguided in their sort of anger and hatred towards this notion that they forget how we got there in the first place. I'm a day one player, right? So in the very first few weeks and months of the game, if you recall, everything was very new. Every clan was figuring out what Immortal was, what Shadow was, how it even worked. When the first ever Immortal clan ascended, everybody quickly realized that during ROE, right, the Shadows had to win a minimum amount of games each week to overthrow the Immortal. I believe week one was like 5 matches, week two was four, so on and so forth. At the beginning of the game, there weren't that many whales, right? So as
Hmm.
long as one clan had few whales, they literally dominated everybody in right. It was not even close. And keep in mind, during those times, there were no limits to how long you can stay immortal. Like the longest we've ever stayed was 10 weeks, right? So you could literally hold on to it forever until you're bored or until someone knocks you off. And it quickly became clear to a lot of clans that it was going to take extremely long time. So what did clans do? That's when the politics began. It didn't begin recently. It began like in the first Immortal reign. Shadows started to DM, whisper, message other clan leads. It's like, hey, if I send you a big resonance player, you'll have a higher chance of winning your ROE match, right? So if I seed multiple Shadow clans in ROE, the sooner we can win more matches, hit the goal, and overthrow the sitting Immortal. And if you help me do that, I'll promise that when I ascend, I'll take you guys and somebody else as my two ally clans, right? So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
think about this here. Like, is anyone naive enough to think that this wasn't part of the plan for Blizzard, right? I mean, to me, it's like a stroke of genius. The collusion and the politics, in my opinion, was 100% by design because it motivated folks to spend, to get stronger, to dominate the cycles. So the creation of competition creates incentives for whales to spend, right? I mean, the psychology behind it is diabolical, but it's pretty genius. It's a smart business design. So you fast forward to today. Look at the changes that they've recently made, right? Now the statue phase doesn't matter anymore. You can lose a statue and still clinch a blessed reign. Some people don't even know that, right? It's a recent change they made. Now, instead of winning 8-2 at the final week to secure a blessed reign, you only have to win 7-3 in both week 6 and 7 to secure a blessed reign. These numbers aren't by accident, right? Just look at the math. Blizzard literally made it so that the three Immortal clans can punt 3 matches every week in ROE, consolidate all their power, and guarantee they win 7 out of 10 and secure Blessed Reign. It's easy. Those 3 clans that they're punting to, well, guess who they are, right? They're the other 3 clans in the Blessed rotation. So they've basically handed you an endgame template that sets up 100% a reality where 6 clans dominate a server. 3 clans rotate with the other 3 clans. Now, let's just say, all right, this is polluting the competitive nature of the game. And even if you get rid of all the whales in the game, I mean, guess what would happen, right? Those 6 vacant spots, I have no doubt, will immediately be filled by the next 6 strongest clans. Yeah, they may not be whales, but the politics and the collusion is never going to end. And if you don't think those 6 clans that replace those 6 whale clans are going to open up Discord and talk amongst each other to do the exact same thing as the clans they've replaced, I mean, we're just being delusional and intellectually dishonest with ourselves, right? This is not collusion. It's literally the state of the end game. It's based on politics. It's based on the power consolidation. So I think that, I mean, I think we're vilifying clans a bit for doing it. I think it's more about the natural selection and the survival of the fittest, because I think ultimately it's inevitable that you're going to have some semblance of 6 clans filling that role to rotate the reign. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense actually, and I agree with you that well, first of all, that it's happening, and that it's typically happening with spender clans because you're the stronger ones that are up there. I do
Right.
agree that if all whales were banned and then the free to play clans came up, they would still obviously use tactics that they can to maintain that reign, especially if
Hmm.
this unwritten blueprint that was made by Blizzard, which is maybe a strike of genius by their business model to make more money,
Yeah.
was put in place. I don't disagree. And actually, when the game came out, and I was in all the test versions of the game for I believe it was
Right.
a year. We didn't know about pay to win during that time. We didn't know
Hmm.
until the very end about the immortal shadow status. And as soon as we learned about that, it was like, all right, this is going to be a political game, and that's going to get messy. And I mean,
Absolutely.
that's like you said,
Absolutely.
probably by design. So I just to conclude this topic, do you? We talked about like arranged blessed reigns and all that, but what about win trading? It's very similar in the topic, but it's a term that's thrown around a lot. What do you? Is there any truth to the whole thought of win trading, and how does your community take it when you're being accused of win trading?
It doesn't feel accusatory to us because, like, I think it's sort of the same thing as that with or without us, it would still be happening
Mm-hmm.
because most players, most free to play players, and most casual players, they want the cape because without a strong clan, it's something that they're never going to be able to do themselves, right? And believe it or not, most of the whale community just wants harmony. Like we want to be able to play with our friends. We don't want to be warring every single day because wars become toxic.
Yeah.
Wars can become it bleeds outside of the game, right? Like people get doxxed and stuff. Like it's just really bad sometimes. And for the most part, I think I speak on behalf of all whales is that they don't want to be embroidered in war every single day. And so what most whales want is fun rivalries and healthy competition. So we may have unscripted in terms of like Vigil of Blades, we may have unscripted in terms of vaults and ROE and whatnot, but the idea of hey, if you allow us to get this 7 week blessed reign, it's kind of like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. That absolutely exists, but in my opinion, I don't think that's in violation of any rules, right? That's literally, I think, how the game was designed, and I think people are just understanding the politics and the tactics necessary to ensure that they maintain a strong, healthy clan because people will flock to stronger clans that can, I don't want to say guarantee, but have a very strong chance of getting a blessed reign, since that's the only endgame carrot that is available right now in the game. Once people roll off, as a lot of these clans are basically one blessed reign away from getting the last cape, you're going to see a very large shift for all the people who are complaining about this is getting stale. The win trading is always, it feels like it's repetitive. Keep in mind that a lot of these whale clans are going to get their final cape. Once that final cape is gotten, it's going to be a brave new world because people are no longer going to feel the need to go and reign for 7 weeks. It might actually become competitive again. It might actually change the landscape. It might actually become the Wild West. We don't actually know what's going to happen. So stay tuned and see. It's going to be pretty interesting.
That's interesting. Good point. Okay. Now we kind of talked about this before about the hired
Yeah.
mercenaries and migrating servers. Is there? You mentioned that was something that you recall may have happened in an instant. Is this?
Yeah.
Is there? Do you know of there being an organized system in place for this? Importing whales to maliciously do this type of a thing, or was it just?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that, the opportunity to clarify that. So, I mean, in the old days, right, we didn't have a transfer button. And what was happening was that whales after a certain period, I think Blizzard underestimated how fast people grind, and they were able to max rank their gear, max their resonance, max their stats, and just be able to get a lot of the end game stuff done very quickly. And the problem with that is that when you have whales who are essentially at the end game prematurely, from Blizzard's perspective, I think that's probably the worst place to have your heavy spender population be. Why? Because as soon as the whale realizes there's nothing left in the game to spend money on, like, I mean, guess what happens next, right? They move on to the next game.
Mm-hmm.
So the $1 million question was never whether or not these guys would keep spending. they're going to keep spending the money. I mean, it's their hobby. The million dollar question was whether or not they were going to spend the money on your game or someone else's game. And so prior to server transfers being a thing, the power dynamics on every server was wildly different. It like varied across different servers, right? So the people though who were stuck on the servers were only like one clan was monopolizing all the power trade. People quit because vaults would be dead. There's no challenge. There's no competition. There were no blessed rains back then to grind. Most clans intentionally stayed as shadows because Immortals was such a huge distraction and a chore. There was so much politics. And so whales decided to quit because they were just in prison on a game with nothing to do. So servers were bleeding out. Blizzard knew that this was not going to work. They put the server transfer button in there to make it legal so that people can go and meet with friends, team up together. It's kind of sparked and revitalized the competitive landscape in the game. And it kind of it created parity among all the different servers, right? Because as soon as that server transfer button was announced, I believe if my recollection is correct, not too long after they announced the whole Blessed Rain thing. So they knew that powers would shift, powers would align, and it would basically even out the power distribution across all the servers. What I mean by that is if you already know that this server has 6 whale clans and you're looking for a Blessed Rain, you're not going to join that server. You're going to transfer to a server where there's only one whale clan and start your own alliance, right? Because I mean that just made more sense. So it actually helped them distribute the power and create parity. So in my opinion, I think it was totally by design. Now, to answer your question, I think I just said that to establish the fact that server transfer in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? Now, as far as abusing server transferability to try to perform like hostile takeovers and stuff, I don't actually think outside of like one or two clans that I can think of. I will not name them,
Thank
but
you.
I mean, there are clans who are toxic. There are clans who just want to, like Alfred said in The Dark Knight, some people don't want a reason, they just want to watch the world burn, right? And sometimes that happens, but I would say that in general, there are very few groups of people whose sole purpose is just to go to a server, just to annihilate it. Because, like, it'd almost be like crapping where you eat, right? Because if you burn down every server, what's
Yeah.
the end goal? Are you just going to destroy the game? Like it's like buying a car then destroying the road that you have to drive the car on. Like I don't see the purpose of that. So I don't think everybody in the whale community thinks like that. But I think it's all about perspective. Okay, so let me give you a good example. Echo, I don't know if you've seen these movies, but I was a huge fan of the Zack Snyder Man of Steel and the Batman v Superman movies, right? I don't know if you've seen those. Have you seen those?
I'm the guy where you ask if I've seen a movie and I almost always say no. Never was a huge movie guy. Sorry.
Never, never. Okay, so for the people who are listening, they're going to know what I'm talking about. So, at the end of the first movie, right? You see Superman the hero, and you see Zod the villain, and they're just fighting it out. It's the epic climax of the movie. They're in Metropolis. They're doing their crazy CGI fight, and they're just destroying everything around them. Right? They're leveling the city. They're going crazy at each other, and finally, at the very end, Superman wins. Good guy wins, hooray, everybody's happy, happy ending, happy life, happy story, everything's done. What I found interesting is that in the next movie, the director chooses to retell that same epic climactic fight, but from a different vantage point. It was from the vantage point of someone on the ground of the city where the action was taking place. And instead of the whole, like, yay, Superman, you're helping us win, he was looking at death and destruction, buildings falling on top of civilians, right? An entire piece of cement dropping and killing. Like, it was carnage. And I think, to me, that's a good analogy for what I'm trying to describe here. I think from a perspective of, well, where are you coming from, right? Let's say a toxic clan descends on your server and threatens to do a hostile takeover, right? Wouldn't it stand to reason then that the opposing clans on the server who care about their community will stand against them? And if the opposing clans realize, let's say they're severely outgunned and outmanned, wouldn't it stand to reason that they would then sound the alarm and call for help, right? So now, if these allies come because server transfer is a thing, and there's relationships, there's networks, and friends help each other out, if these friends come to defend that server from a hostile takeover and all war breaks out, who determines who is quote unquote right versus who is quote unquote wrong, right? So the history says, well, the winner gets to write the history books, the losers don't, right? But if you ask a casual member, let's say from the losing side, maybe they were part of, unknowingly even, part of the alliance where they were the ones that started the beef or started the war. If things don't go their way and you're on the losing side, right? People's feelings get hurt. Clans may disband. War bands may disband. People might want to leave the server because they don't want to participate in war anymore. From the losing side, it may feel like, geez, these guys came. They disrupted what was otherwise a peaceful life. Now everything's up in turmoil. All of my Diablo stuff has been turned upside down, right? This is not right. This is wrong. But think about it from the other side. If you're on the winning side and you are able to successfully defend your server from a toxic clan from a hostile takeover, what's your narrative? Your narrative is, great job, everybody. We saved the server. It was a bloody mess, but we got the job done. To everybody, high fives and pats on the backs all around. So I think it's really hard to say. There really is no like right or wrong in this. It's more about, it depends on which side you're on, right? Every side, every time two big factions collide and erupt in war in Diablo Immortal, there's going to be people who are negatively affected, and there's going to be people who are positively affected. And so again, and I think, okay, and I know that people will say, okay, that's fine and all. I can totally accept that. Except, what if it's paid accounts, right? You are using paid accounts to quote unquote manipulate and turn the tide of a war. And for that, I would go back to my earlier response to say, well, if the paid accounts thing is the main culprit, if that is the de facto bottleneck that we just can't get around, again, I would encourage Blizzard to really consider this problem and say, well, why don't we legalize it and make it an actual thing? If it's going to happen anyways, and people are really bent out of shape by having quote unquote illegal accounts participate in the game, even though it's basically ubiquitous everywhere by now, then let's address it head on, put a spotlight on it, and let's actually turn it into a regulated thing. That would be my response to it.
Yeah, something that I've actually realized a lot over the past 2 months. I was not aware, and I think that a lot of people that are more casual players don't realize how many people that you play with on a regular basis are actually buying and selling accounts and are
Yep.
actually participating in the stuff that you're talking about. Again, not saying that I believe it's right or wrong, but I was just very surprised with friends that I speak to, people that I get advice from about the game that really have a deep understanding of classes and builds, how much of that's going on. Just something that surprised me. All right, so
Yep.
there's a couple more things I want to talk about before we close out the video. One of
Yep.
them is all this narrative going on. You have both sides. You're going to see both sides in the comments as well. I'm sure there's going to
Yep.
be a lot of people that have things to say. There's going to be a lot of people
Yep.
that no matter what you say, they're going to stick to, you are breaking terms of service, and that's against the rules of the game. And no matter what happens to the game, your accounts should be banned. That's a comment that we're
Yep.
going to see. I already know that.
Hmm.
So if so many people are talking about all this stuff with the community of whales and how all these narratives are in place to take over servers, buy and sell accounts, manipulate wars, and have these mercenaries out there as well. Why? I'm trying to phrase my question here so that it makes a lot of
Hmm.
sense. But how are all of these things out there and all of these feelings from that side of the community out there? If everything that you're saying
Hmm.
here and your reasoning for everything is the truth, is it just their lack of understanding of what you guys are actually doing, or is just I guess your perspective on that?
Yeah, and I honestly think it is partially. I think it's a a multitude of layers of issues, right? It's one is, yeah, people don't really understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes, and it's not their fault, right? I mean, people play the game at different levels. Some play hardcore, some play casually, some are in the whale community, some are not, and it's fine. And I think that when you don't understand fully the full picture, people just tend to fill in the gaps with their own narratives, right? And I can understand why people dislike whale behavior. I can understand why people may not like that. And I think, we live in a society where I think cancel culture and like kind of mob mentality is very widespread. I mean, it's the internet. It can be a very happy place, it can be a very toxic place. And so I don't know why there's some people who are hell bent on destroying the community. It could just be misunderstanding. It could be jealousy or envy, the whole like, well, if I can't have it, you can't either, that
Hmm.
sort of deal. Or it can just be like people just don't realize, and hopefully this video and all the answers shed light on some of the other ideas and some of the other truths and facts about what's happening behind the curtains. My my I guess plea for people is don't just believe everything you read or hear on the internet, right? Do your own research, talk to people, understand and think intellectually and deeper about both sides and understand the dynamics of a game. Like you said, this game was designed to be a very heavily social, economical, and political game.
Hmm.
And it's great. It's like the best game I've ever played. It's insane how deep it is for a mobile game. There's nothing on the market that comes even close by a wide margin. And so I'm sure people have legitimate gripes. I'm sure they've had bad experiences with whales. But I would say this for every toxic whale you've ever encountered, I know 10 of them that are willing to help you. Uh, we've carried people through Gauntlet, through raids. We've carried entire clans through Blessed Rains just to allow them to experience a side of the game that they've never had. There are a lot of good whales out there as well. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to let your own audience draw their conclusions based on the things that they hear from both sides. And that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I think that goes with anything. I'm not even talking about gaming. You're gonna have
Yeah.
people that have a certain profession, people that are a certain race, people that are whales inside of big spenders inside of a game or not. You're gonna have good ones and you're gonna have bad ones, but it's not fair to judge anyone based off of your experience with one person from a certain niche, because there's bad eggs in all baskets everywhere.
Yep.
So good point there
Exactly.
as well. I appreciate that. Um, Let's talk really quickly about mass reporting. I know this has been a massive problem. It's a tool that's used inside of the game. Um, I mean, my assumption is Blizzard put this tool in place so that if things are actually going wrong in the game and people are doing things that are negative to the game, that the community would come together and report that person. That doesn't mean that they would get a mob of people reporting the person, but if I happen to go see something inside of the game and someone doing something illegal in the game, I'd have the ability to go report. Mind you, I have never reported anyone ever inside of the game for
Yeah.
anything. It's
Right.
just not something that I would probably ever do in any game. Not because I'm against
Yeah.
doing
It's
it.
not,
I'm just not that guy that's going to do it. But it's
me
being
neither.
used as a
It's just
weapon.
not me.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, I think most
I
people are
agree.
in the same boat. But
Yeah.
the way that the system works, because it's being monitored by AI robots or whatnot, it's not actually going across someone's desk where they're reading each report and then deciding this person should be banned. To think that a system like that's in place would be silly. um, what do you think? I mean, it's clearly being used as a weapon.
Yeah.
It needs to be, in my opinion, addressed in some way by Blizzard, either by removing it from the game because it's impacting the game in a negative way. I mean, I'm talking people that are not even whales are getting banned. I'm
Yeah.
talking about people that
Exactly.
maybe someone has a particular gripe with that person and they have their community that just go, attack that person for reasons that may even have nothing to do with the game. So how do you feel?
You can.
And have you been a part
Yeah.
of any of, like, a victim of any of that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw your video about the one Reddit post, right?
Yeah.
And even a year ago, it sounds like it was happening. It's still happening now. I absolutely agree with you. The word you used was weaponized, and I think it's 100% true. I think the intention is great. I think the execution was flawed, much like a lot of other things in this game. But yeah, I just think that I think what they need to do is just make it so that you can still collect all the information. You can still have people report bans and mass report, but you need to have a validation or some type of milestone checker. You can't just have an auto ban because that is just insane to me. You
Yeah.
need to have it so that you have the reporting capabilities to flag a certain account if they've been reported on excess of whatever 50 times 60 times, right? What I would suggest, and I hope Blizzard can really listen to this and consider this, is accumulate all the data that you're doing right now. Don't change. But you need to have, at the very end of the assembly line, you need to have an actual operational person, a live human being with discernment and judgment. Look at all of these and rationalize if it's a legitimate report or not. If it's legitimate, do the ban. By all means, ban the account. If it's illegitimate or it's not actually doing what it's intending on doing, then you don't auto ban. Like I think the banning or putting a strike on the account is so severe because you will literally lose your account permanently
Hmm.
that it has to be executed by an individual. It cannot just be a three strikes you're out and it's an auto ban. Like that to me is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
And for what it's worth, people can actually, it's so easy now to just spin up 100 bot accounts because they don't check that. Bots are running rampant in the game. And you can literally have the bots mass report something 24/7. Like it's not out of the question, right? And so if you really wanted to, just like you said, never mind whales. If anybody has any kind of gripe with anyone and they're technologically savvy, they can immediately abuse the system and weaponize it to anyone they want and permanently ban someone's account. Like if you just listen to that statement on its face value, there's absolutely something wrong with it.
yeah, no, I agree. It sounds like there's a full time position open at Blizzard for someone to look over all these reports. The funny thing is,
Absolutely.
a lot of these reports, like if you're reporting a clan for a clan name that's inappropriate, it is a very quick job to look at the clan name and say, either yes, it's inappropriate, or no, it's not. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of the mass reports are stupid things like that. It's not even like a huge investigation needs to happen. It's just
Right.
a quick glance and say, "Oh, this is bogus." Yeah. And regarding people in the community feeling a certain way about the whale community, I mean, honestly, it's not fair. There's also whales that are out there that are going to probably have a different opinion than you and your community that you're sharing here today,
Mm-hmm.
because like you
Yep.
are not all whales are not created equal. All groups of whales are not with the same agenda, so there's definitely differences there. Um, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are have their opinions that are making them vocal, and I'm talking about obviously some content creators, myself included,
Yeah.
right? I hear stuff, I
Right.
learn about stuff, I'm shared stuff, and I say, okay, I'm going to make a piece of content at it. I know personally that I'm never doing it in a malicious way, but there are people out there that do, and I'm not saying content creators, although maybe there are, I don't know, but just people in general, just trying to,
Right.
because, and it's mostly out of, you said jealousy and all of that stuff. I think it's also out of anger too. They get
Mm-hmm.
upset and angry about things that are happening inside of a game that they also have a passion for in some
Mm-hmm.
fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how they address it. Everyone handles them
Yep.
in different ways.
Yep.
I guess I want to ask you your closing. Yeah, let's get to that before I ask you another question that I have. Closing thoughts or things after having this nearly hour-long discussion. Anything that you wanted to share that maybe we breezed over, or you didn't really get in depth enough that we can
Yeah.
do right now at the
No,
end.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I think, look, the bottom line is either we enforce all TOS or we don't enforce it at all. Like, I don't know how to solve this problem. I don't have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is that can't be arbitrary, like based on someone's feelings or emotions, right? We can't weaponize and witch hunt people for personal agendas. We got to rise like above that pettiness and propose creative solutions for Blizzard as a community on how to emphasize fair play, right? It can't just be all focused or centralized on one person's political warpath, right? And the game is far from perfect. People who play the game are far from perfect. But we're having this conversation here because we love the game. We want to continue seeing it succeed and thrive. And I don't think we would be here having this hour-long conversation if we didn't. And so, look, you just got to prune some branches from a tree from time to time if you want it to bear fruit. Like, but if it doesn't turn out the way you want, you can't just take an axe to it, right? Like, you got to see the forest through the trees. It's a complex game with complex politics and complex problems. It's not black and white, and so therefore the solution won't be black and white either. It's multiple shades of gray. So I just want to encourage the community to come together. Let's be rational. Let's intellectually think about this, right? I don't want it to resort to any of this type of denigration or demonizing of particular clans or whale individuals or communities in general, because I think that's just a toxic way to solve a problem. And you actually lose credibility with your own community if you keep doing that, right? So I'm confident that people can listen to this, draw their own conclusions. The great thing about the truth is that it's something you don't have to worry about sugarcoating. In due time, it's always going to reveal itself. So I appreciate your channel. I appreciate you, man, for having me on, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're always welcome back to, have a discussion. I think that people are going to enjoy this video because it's something that's never been heard. So that's a huge part of why I wanted you to have on. You have an open invite to come on at any point in time. I also really appreciate how well put together your discussion was. You didn't curse anyone by name. You didn't call out any clans. You kept everything very general, which is exactly what I like to do on this channel, because I never want to throw anyone under the bus, whether they are right or whether they are wrong, whether they are out for good, whether they're out for bad. I try to keep everything, as I said, neutral. So I really appreciate you, and it's not even like we had to have a big discussion about that, but I really appreciate you coming on as an adult and having a nice adult conversation. Now, I did have a question. It is a little bit off topic, but now that I have a whale who spent quite a bit of money in the game on a call and who represents the community, why Diablo Immortal and not something like a Diablo 4 or a Path of Exile 2? Now, I think I may know the answer to this, but the amount of money that you and your community spend on this game, you could spend a lot less and play one of those titles, which are arguably better games, whether you believe that or not. What's your reasoning for investing so much money into a mobile game?
I think at this point, it's more about the community than the actual game,
Mm,
right? I think the community is amazing. It's like one that I've never experienced before. I've played a lot of games. And so people spend because you want to continue supporting your community, you want to continue supporting the game, and you want to compete. I mean, all of us who do this are highly competitive, and we want to be the best of the best. And unfortunately, and like we know, right? It's a business model. People will pay $20 for a cup of coffee.
mm-hmm.
I'll pay to invest in my game. That's sort of my mentality for it.
I get it. It makes sense. Have you played Diablo 4 or no?
I have not played Diablo 4. I've played
That's so
all of
funny.
the other previous ones leading up until Diablo Immortal. And once I got here, I knew I was going to play it because first mobile game for the phone, it was absolutely a no-brainer. But once I got into it and I saw how deep it was, I was like, this is one
Oh
of the
wow.
most brilliant games I've ever seen in my life.
No, I appreciate the context. I had a feeling that you were going to talk about community. I mean, Diablo Immortal also offers things that those other two titles don't offer, and it is this whole mechanic that we've been talking about in here today.
Yeah.
But Mr. W, at the end of the day, I really do appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to your community and really get a whole consensus about the topics that we were going to talk about today, so that we weren't just hearing from one person, but someone that represents a much larger group. So thanks for your time for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And as I said, you have a welcome invite back.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see all you guys back in the next video.